Chapter 17 Primroses in a Potato Field. Toward the end of the 19th century, while some scientists were tracing the growth of embryos, or looking through their microscopes at minute cells, and others were examining the movements within a speck of protoplasm, a great many biologists were identifying new species of animals and plants. That absorbing occupation which Linnaeus had begun now reached huge proportions. Soon it appeared that the diversity of living forms on Earth was far greater than anyone had imagined. Millions of different animals were studied and named. The scientists found more than 200,000 species of plants, and still they kept finding more. Probably there were twice as many animals and plants as those they had accounted for, they said. Besides all the various living species, they found the fossil remains of many that had once lived and disappeared again. Bones of strange, unknown animals were unearthed from clay pits and sandbanks. Traces of ancient ferns remained in strata of rocks, and tree trunks millions of years old were pressed down into the earth in petrified form. Some of these plants and animals appeared to be related in living species. Some of them were entirely different in every way, as if they had lived but left no descendants. How did so many different species start? The biologist kept asking. It was a very old question indeed. Lamarck had thought that as each animal or plant adapted itself to its environment, it acquired new characteristics which it passed on to later generations. So finally, a new species of animal was developed. Darwin had found another explanation for the creation of new species. He thought that in the struggle for existence, nature selected those who were best fitted to live. In this way, small variations that were of advantage to the living creature were preserved, and these were accumulated from one generation to another, until a new species was formed. It would take thousands of years to bring such a thing about, he acknowledged, but the earth had been inhabited for thousands of years, and he could see no other possible explanation. In whatever way the various species were made in the first place, it was certainly true that millions of them could live side by side and never intermingle. A dog did not mate with a cat, nor a skunk with a raccoon. Oak and ash, beech and maple remained separate from each other. Even the insects, of which there were so many million kinds, did not usually cross the line. One man counted 1,402 different species of insects in his backyard. Rarely the lines of species did cross, and a creature mated outside its own group, but then the offspring, called hybrids, could generally not reproduce again. Why was all this? No one had been able to find out. Mendel, the Augustinian monk, had done more work on the question of heredity than anyone else, but he did not know why characteristics were passed on in a particular way, and he did not know how new species were created. Nature guarded her mystery closely, and then came Hugo de Vries, trying to wrest her secret from her. Hugo de Vries was a professor of botany at the University of Amsterdam and director of the Botanic Garden there. He was handsome, with a thin face, a pointed beard, and an expression at once penetrating, lively, and sympathetic. He was endowed also with a great gift of patience. Assiduity and exactitude were what was needed, he said, and for the work in which he was engaged. Hugo de Vries set to work first with marigolds, working in the Botanic Garden at Amsterdam. He counted the florets on thousands of plants, collecting and labeling them to try to find out the laws by which some of the little golden flowers inherited their colors and forms from one generation that had gone before, while others appeared to have quite different characteristics. For although de Vries was a follower of Darwin, he had observed that plant growers and animal breeders made little progress by selecting for reproduction the reddest rose or the racehorse with the strongest muscles. They waited instead for a particular trait to crop out, and seized upon it. Nageli, the botanist who had paid so little attention to Gregor Mendel, had suggested that new species originated in sudden changes, in sports, or what he called mutations, and de Vries was inclined to believe that this was true. How could he prove it? Not in the Botanic Garden, it seemed. All his counting of marigold florets came to nothing. Perhaps he could find some other plants to work on, he thought. Perhaps he could see the thing better if he studied wildflowers. He began to search the country around Amsterdam for examples of plants he wanted to study. He considered and rejected nearly 100 different kinds of plants. Then one day he came upon an abandoned potato field. The owner of the potato field, Dr. Juris Six, did not value it much. It was bordered on two sides by canals, and no road led to it. That was why he had been unable to rent it for potato growing. It had lain fallow for several years, and wild plants had grown up in it undisturbed. De Vries came to the field for the first time toward evening, and as he approached he saw a great mass of yellow primroses, tall as a man's head. They had escaped from a neighboring park and multiplied, and here they were, glowing in the evening light. As he walked closer, he said, he was impressed by their stately beauty, their tall stems crowned with yellow flowers, over which butterflies and bumblebees were hovering. Here were the subjects for his study. De Vries knew a great deal about primroses already. He knew that there were many species, but that they were all called Oenothera. He knew that they were originally American plants and that one species had been taken from Virginia to Europe in 1614. The other two species had been imported to Europe in the 18th century. The species in the potato field were called Ornithera lamarckiana, for Lamarck had first identified them among the plants growing in the garden of the Museum of Natural History in Paris. Standing in the abandoned potato field, De Vries examined the plants before him. They were There were great differences in the height of the plants, the form of the leaves, the way the stems branched. He knew almost at once that this was the place where, if he was sufficiently patient, he could find out what he wanted to know. Quote, it was a wonderful opportunity of getting an insight into the phenomenon of variation as exhibited by the plant that was multiplying rapidly, he wrote later. In 1886 he took a house a short distance from the field, and almost every day that year he spent several hours studying his evening primroses. In the summer of 1887, in a corner of the field, he found 10 specimens that he knew immediately were a different type. Their petals were small and oval and quite different from those of the other plants. He called them Ornithera labifolia. He worked on, examining the seedlings, observing leaves and stems and flowers. By the end of 1889, he had examined 53,509 plants in 8 generations, and among them he had discovered 8 completely new types. He cross-pollinated them, and every time they bred true. Later he wrote, from the new species, quote, they come into existence at once, fully equipped without preparation or immediate steps. No series of generations, no selection, no struggle for existence was needed. It was a sudden leap into a new type, a sport, in the best accepted tradition of the word. It fulfilled my hopes and at once gave proof of the possibility of direct observation of the origin of species and of the experimental control thereof. Unquote. When De Vries first announced his mutation theory, it was met with a storm of protest. He had not performed his experiments carefully enough, the biologist said. Was he pretending that he could supplant Darwin's theory of survival of the fittest? But the friends of De Vries saw that his work a great advance over the old theorizing. Certainly, Darwin's idea of the survival of the fittest still holds good, they said, but De Vries' mutations supply new characters which may or may not survive. People have talked of mutations before, they said. De Vries has proved that they exist. But though De Vries established the fact that mutations exist, they are still not very well understood. They must not be considered miracles. If they seem to be exceptions to general laws, it may be that this is only because we do not fully understand the general laws. Quote, the understanding must be stretched and enlarged to take in the image of the universe as it is discovered, Francis Bacon said in the 16th century, and it seems still to be true.